I got nothing. Hey, today's Wednesday, February 7th. I'm really glad that we had a kid absent today because there's a good chance they're going to watch this and not be irresponsible and not watch it. And so this would be going on with the advanced class. If you're regular kids, you're going to want to switch to the other video because you'll probably be a little bit confused, but it's good for you. Book report checkpoint is tomorrow. I had to flip-floppy things, and so tomorrow is when we're going to have 14 squares, not today. So if it's done today, or if you're skipping school today just to work on it, haha, joke's on you. You can still come tomorrow. And then you can still come to the dance, bring $5 to shape a monkey bear. After you tape a monkey bear to the wall. Spelling bee is next Friday. If you're interested in spelling words, go you. Today was the last day to turn in stuff. If you're home and dead and still want a shirt, if you send me an email, I can save one for you. Otherwise, you're out of luck. And speech coming up on Monday. We look forward to seeing what kind of wonderful things you have to say. Hopefully you don't forget. Download those two things and to hear. We got through, I believe, the first 4 with you guys yesterday.
Yeah.
That seems about right. No. We'll do a quick review-y and then sort of jump into it from there and have you keep moving things around. Or, those of you who did not write things down at all because you're just waiting until later on, we'll just harass you at that point too. So, maybe kids are harassed a little time. Chaos! And where did we put chaos?
Everything.
Because what was chaos?
Nothing.
It was
nothing but everything.
Good job. You guys get really excited.
It was pudding. You're a moron. Oxymoron.
I love pudding.
It was the giant ball of swirling pudding that eventually separates like a giant pudding amoeba to form the very first 2 gods we're going to talk about today. And it formed Gaia and Uranus, Mother Earth, and Father Sky. And because it forms the earth and sky, it then also is known as a place. It forms the gods later on, so the gods come from it, so that kind of makes it a god. It's also a thing because pudding. It's also other stuff because swirling ball of nothing. So much confusion. Chronos goes into
Gods.
That's where we put Chronos and the gods. Back over here, behind where we have Colton, that's where we have Chronos wearing his adorable miniskirt while he's going golfing. There's also up here, the Chronos is on that one. Chronos is the one over there. On the handouts you downloaded, Chronos is there. Spelled different ways in all of them. And why is that okay? Because of the whole oral tradition thing, like the oral tradition of me taking kids' homework when they're working on other things during class, when they already don't have many points, would be a bold move to make in the first place. One of the things you're going to pick up with me, by the way, is whenever I do an attack like that, I look the opposite direction of wherever it's happening, because you all will follow my eyes and go the other way, and it tries to save someone from having everyone stare at them. It's a way of being nice and kind instead of glaring at them. I don't glare at the person the second time, but I've learned teaching-wise, if I look this way and attack a kid, you guys all turn that way too, and it gives the kid a chance to put things away, and then we all look back and they go, hello, and they can look all innocent. It's my way of trying to be nice. Just don't get used to it. What, you want to know if he had his notebook out so we can work on it? Probably. He's going to get that out in just a moment, too. Another question, Ray, when we help our people along.
You just revealed your secret then.
You might not know this. Many of you guys are still dumb, and the next time I do it and still look a different direction, your instinct is going to kick in, and you're all going to look that direction. The thing is this, and you're going to live there going, wait a minute. It seems like he said something one day, and you look up at the sky, like, oh, and then turn the other way. One kid's going to be sitting there again, and it's going to be, I've been doing this a long time. It's like you just bank on us being dumb? Yes, I do. Anyway, back to learning. Chronos! And you said oral tradition. There's a whole reason why it's spelled differently, which is fine for me. And we will get to the story tomorrow. Yeah, all right. Jumping to Hades. Where does Hades go?
Gods
and places. Once again, he's back here above where Colton is. Was Hades evil?
No.
He
was a gopher.
Antisocial.
He just didn't want to talk to people. But unfortunately, people kept talking to him, and he would lash out with anger, and that's when you would have the problems because he'd get all mad and grumpy. He just wanted to sit in the back with a hoodie over his head and rock out this music and stuff like that.
Sounds like another friend.
Sorry, hiccups. And so because of that, he also was not very creative. So what does he name the place where he lives? Hades. What was the nickname for that place? And that's why we talked a little bit yesterday about the fact that we had to have a nickname for him. Did we get to his nickname? He was the dark one, or the rich one. The rich one because of all the gold and diamonds underneath the ground. That's why he had the grill with the gold teeth and stuff like that. He was the coolest of all the gods. He also would bling out his bride, had like little spinners on the side, stuff like that. Go Hades. Did we talk about hell yesterday?
What?
Basically, that's where bad people go.
Good job. In Greek mythology, it's different than Christianity. In Christianity, there's a place called hell. In Greek mythology, there's not. In the Greek mythology, there's just underworld. Hades is where all dead people go, regardless of you being good or bad. Now, eventually, there's different parts in the underworld we'll get to, but for the most part, when you die, you go down there. If you spend your whole life catching babies that get thrown out of buildings, and you become known as Bob the baby catcher, you're still going to go straight to the underworld when you die. If you spend your whole world throwing babies out of windows, and you become known as Billy the baby thrower, when you die, you go to the underworld. And you guys just meet each other. Hi, Bob, I'm Billy. What do you do? I throw babies. And so you get a chance to meet each other. All dead people go down there. The idea of burning and fire and the pitchforks and the guy with the little woo-woo, that does not come until Christianity, which is thousands of years later. But as far as this goes, as far as Greek mythology, it was just a cave. You just wandered around looking at people going, oh, look, dead person, rock, cricket. And that was pretty much the whole time that you were down there. Is this where you're demonstrating that me not calling on you for a long time? You have to write down the question. Good job. Demonstrate that. Help other kids out. And so that's how the whole underworld thing works. Hell does not come in much later. So that is a whole different theology. And then we got to the whole underworld. Covered that. And things are there. Yay. Titans. Now we get to a new area to see where things go. Look where you put Titans. Is it in gods?
Sure.
Places? Things? Other stuff? Titans, synonym for gods. They're the exact same thing. If you're a god, you're a titan. If you're a titan, you're a god. All the big posters you see around my room, the 6 that are over there, 6 over here, those are all titans. The little posters, most of those are the same people, except for a couple bonuses. Those are all titans. And my poster over here, all but one of them is also a titan. If you were a god, a titan was your race. It's like saying the same thing as a Homo sapien and a person. It's just Titan was like the official name, but we called them little g gods. What about the Olympians? I thought those were different. The Olympians and the Titans are the exact same thing. Amarian,
I need my iPad.
bring me a pass from the teacher saying you need it. I'll be happy to give it to you. You're good to go. And so it's the same thing as saying it's like heroes versus 7th graders.
Never died?
And because it's the same idea, because here, you can be a 7th grader, but not every 7th grader is special enough to become a hero. Same thing with Greek mythology. You have a bunch of titans, but not all of them are special enough to become an Olympian. Are you calling us special? Yeah. Some of you more special than others. Vulcanize! For Vulcanize, let's go gods, places, things, other stuff.
Other stuff!
Vulcanize is other stuff. It's just a word that comes from Greek mythology. It actually comes from Roman mythology. It's going to come from this guy over here, Hephaestus, that guy. His Roman name was Vulcan. He's the same one over here above Graverson. That's the same guy there. And so his Roman name was Vulcan. Here with my yellow sheets, where we have the things there, we have both the Greek name and the Roman name. Greeks and Romans were pretty much the same thing. Romans came later, spoke a slightly different language, had different names. Just like we have English and Spanish. You can say hello, or you can say hola. It's the same idea. Similar ideas between Greek and Roman. Same people, different names for them. You should recognize most of the Roman gods, because they later on are our planets. And our planets were named after all the Roman gods. And so that's why you're going to have planets named Mercury, Venus,
Mercury.
Jupiter.
good job, Neptune, Pluto. Not only do those come from Roman gods, but there's a reason why each planet got its name. Mercury is named for Hermes, the guy over there who's the fastest of all the gods. It's the one that goes around the sun the fastest. If it goes around the sun the fastest, it was named after the god of speed.
Oh, no.
You're done.
Enjoy. Huh? You have the planet that was red, named after the god of war, because they thought it was covered in blood. You have the planet that was blue, which is Neptune, named after the god of water. You have Pluto, named after the god of the underworld, because it was the darkest planet, which is going to be the Pluto one. So all of those were connected. You wanted to see how Seth wrote down his question, and when I'm calling him, he wants it to work for you also. It's the same idea. It works for all kids. It's okay. And so that would cover how that works. Pandora! Go to Pandora. Gods, places, things, Other stuff.
Other stuff.
Pandora was a god.
What?
Now, I know oftentimes you'll hear the Pandora being a reference like Pandora's box. Technically it was a jar, but we'll get to that. But Pandora was kind of a god, kind of a human. Warmus, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you, the bag of stuff there, separate the, you can sit at my desk if you want, the shirts, the different sizes and stuff like that. So, sweatshirt and t-shirt, the different sizes. Thank you. And so Pandora was actually a titan that was created by Zeus, and that's where the whole box thing comes in. It's a whole big long story about creating a punishment. She was the very first woman created, and he created women as a punishment to humans. But that's
What?
Yes.
well, that's evil and sexist. If you think that's evil and sexist, just wait till we get into all of it. They had a lot of issues. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But that they were evil and sexist.
That's not sexist.
Narcissists. Gods, places, things, other stuff.
Other stuff.
Narcissus
Other stuff.
is in the gods also.
Oh.
He was not a titan. Narcissus was a nymph. And a nymph was the Greek mythology version of an elf. They even had like the pointy little ears. They ran around, stuff like that. There were water nymphs and wood nymphs and all these different kinds of nymphs depending on where they lived. And Narcissus was a wood nymph who he does fall in love with himself. That's where we get the word narcissist. But it wasn't his fault. It's because he made a god mad. And so when you make a god mad, they tend to curse you. And there was a lot of curses going on. And so that's what comes back to haunt. Narcissus. You're still there till the end of class. It's okay. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Next up we have sticks. Sticks, we're going to go gods, places, things, other stuff. Sticks goes in two spots. Both God and place. Also, you could list it as a 70s rock band, but that's not up there. But Styx was a 70s, did Mr. Roboto. Great stuff. Styx starts off as a titan in Greek mythology, and she ends up helping Zeus win this big war. He fights against his father. At the end of the war, he grants her one wish because of this thing that she did. We'll get to another story. He goes, "What is the one thing you want?" She's like, "I've always wanted to be a river." He's like, "No, seriously." She's like, "No, I want to be a river." He's like, "Okay." And turns her into a river and places her down on earth. The problem is, Styx was not a good person. She was evil and nasty and awful, was sarcastic and mean, and when she turned into a river, her personality poisoned the river. And it was so poisonous, if a human just touched it, it killed them dead. And Zeus left this river on earth for a while, but it kept killing people, which apparently is bad. When people just walk by, look, it's water, and they fall down. You'd have a river with just like dead people lining the sides of it. Zeus is like, all right, we're going to have to move the river. So he got like a giant bucket, it was like, whoosh, and put all of it in there, took her down to the underworld, and put her and relocated her down there, which goes back over to where Colton is, above him, that poster. That river in the underworld that separates the living world from the dead world was the river Styx. And he put it down there because the idea being is that you can't kill people who are already dead. And so that way it kept any living person from getting down into the underworld. Now, the good news is, I'm hoping to get through all of these so I can answer questions at the end. The bad news is, it's not the end yet, so this is the part where I still get a chance to ignore you when you raise your hand, right? And don't forget the question's still there. The other bad news is some of you are really excited about Greek mythology and might get moved to the hallway if we keep getting excited and talking. Not that that would ever happen in here, but just randomly saying words out loud. Scythe. Let's go with gods, places, things, other stuff is correct. I put it in things. If you put it in other stuff, that's fine. It's a stick with a blade on the end of it. Once again, going back above Colton, the scythe is the thing that Cronus is holding up. It looks like he's trying to go golfing. That's going to be the scythe. If you've ever seen the Grim Reaper, the guy from Halloween, who has the stick with the curvy blade that comes off of it, that's a scythe. It was a farm tool that you would use for crops like corn and wheat, and you'd go choppy choppy, and it would chop it all down. That's a scythe. There's another one called a sickle, which is similar to a scythe. It's a stick with a blade, and it has a handle on it that made it easier to like spinny, twisty stuff like that. The scythe, Hades never uses a scythe. So he was never actually the Grim Reaper. That is an idea that's combined of two different people, both Hades and then Kronos. but Hades himself never actually uses that weapon to do killing or anything like that. It's about you getting stuff written down.
No, it's about the symbol.
Hold on to that thought. Same thing I told them. We'll get to that at the end. I know so many good questions from there. So that would be the side. It's also, we're going to get to the story next week. He uses it to kill his father. He commits the very first case of patricide. Fancy word that means kill your father. Which, by the way, if you want to have fun tonight, when you go home and have dinner and sit around the table, you should tell your parents, I learned a new word today. Patricide. And then just look at them as creepily as possible and be like, it's okay, it's education. And you can relate to the fact that you now know what the word means. Like, well, what does that mean? To kill your father. And so that's how bonding works, and they'll be proud of you because you're demonstrating learning. Or at least that's what I tell myself all the time. And we are going to get to the story about Patrick. It's okay that he tried to kill his father because his father kept killing all of his children. And so dysfunction all over the place just made things hard. Harpy. Does Harpy go God, place, thing, other stuff? And once again, I could see either being thing or other stuff, depends on how you qualify. I think other stuff. I did. You could put it in thing if you want to. It's a creature from Greek, not Greek. Greek mythology, big words. If you don't know what a harpy is, and we'll get to these later on in one of our stories, it had the body of a woman. Instead of arms, it had wings. And unlike a mermaid, which was really attractive, and they're like, ooh, mermaids, and I'll draw pictures of those, harpies were just the opposite. Harpies were horrifyingly ugly women. And not only were they ugly women, they also, whenever they flew, made a loud shrieking sound. As they were flying at you. On top of that, they usually attacked people the same way monkeys attack people, by flinging certain stuff at you. And so because of that, harpies were not considered a very good creature, which is why it's an insult now. Whenever you call a woman a harpy, it usually means that they are not an attractive person that yells a lot. So oftentimes in stories you'll have like some old guys like, oh, my wife, she's a harpy. It means that she yells a lot and probably is not very attractive. Hopefully it does not involve her flinging stuff, because that's a whole different issue. But we're going to get to harpies and all of their many issues in Greek mythology. Ernest. And where are you going to put Ernest? In gods, places, things, other stuff. You have a 50-50 shot again because it goes in both gods and places. Ernest is up yonder where we have our, what do you call that thing again? Family tree. Words. He's up there. He's not on any of the posters because you can't actually see him very well because he was the sky. He was actually known as Father Sky, because he was the sky, married to Mother Earth, known as Gaia. And so Gaia and Ernest were the very first two. Now, with Gaia and Ernest, those are their Greek pronunciations. Here's the problem. I teach 7th graders. And there's every chance, as soon as I say Gaia and Ernest, you're going to read them a completely different way. And you're going to go, Gaia and Ernest? You mean Gaia and Uranus? And so I've come to terms with this over the years, that when you translate it into your own head, I'm okay with it. Just realize I will pronounce it the actual Greek way, and I'll just watch you giggle, hopefully just internally, where every time you just go, Gaia and Uranus. Just try to keep it as a minimum. Now realize the Greeks had a sense of humor, because this was the very first couple that ever existed in Greek. Not only do you have someone named Gaia and Uranus, but they were married to each other. These guys are hilarious. Yeah, they did not know it was going to be taught to 7th graders thousands of years later, or they might have just called them like Frank and Susan. Next up, Charon. Or Charon or Charon, depending on how you pronounce it. Charon. And there's Chiron, which is Chiron, which is a completely different person, because there's more than one, because confusing. We'll go with gods, places, I kind of gave it away, things, other stuff, by saying it's a different person. Charon is a god.
It is?
It is.
I'm a big kid now.
In the underworld, to go from one side of the the river Styx, who was the other side. He was the one that you'd have to give a gold coin to. He would take you from one to the other side, and that was sort of his job down there. He made bank and bling, and so he was the one that would take you back and forth. The problem is he became rich, but never really got time off to go spend it. I mean, he was not just going around making it rain, making it hail. It was gold coins back then, not money. But that was the problem back then. But that was his job. But we'll get to stories about him coming up too. And there's also a centaur named Chiron, Chiron, who's a whole different character. And they're so similar. Minotaur. We'll go with Minotaur. God, place, thing, other stuff. Wherever you put harpy is where you'll put Minotaur, because they're sort of the same area. Another creature in that same thing. A Minotaur, different than a centaur, which is why I put centaur up there also. The Minotaur, half man, half bull. So many fun guesses. Half man, half bull. Is where had the body of a man and then just the giant head of a bull. In Greek mythology, there's only one. There's not a race of them. There was just one. And the only reason this one was created is because it was a curse by Poseidon, because a king made him mad. And he goes, oh, he made me mad. And so he decided to curse the king's baby. And he said, I'm going to make your baby really ugly, turn it into a half bull. Not done. It's also only going to eat humans. And so he's like, how do you like them apples? He's like, I don't like them apples at all. And he's like, well, you're stuck with your man-eating baby anyway. And so that's how it works. Now, eventually, the Minotaur is killed and stabbed with his own horn. And so the Minotaur died in Greek mythology, but people were so excited about the idea of a people-eating bull man that they eventually brought them back and sort of added them in as other creatures and stories. But originally, just the one. So if we know what a Minotaur is, where are we going to put centaur? In the same spot. But a centaur, slightly different. Not half man, half bull. Half man, half horse. Half man, half horse. Bottom half of horse, top half of a man. In Greek mythology, there were a lot of centaurs. They would go running across the fields. They used to shot with bows and arrows. The only problem with centaurs is they were a little on the wild side, kind of crazy, not real civilized, kind of like a herd of seventh graders, if you will. Just like roaming across fields, like attacking wild animals and stuff like that. They had all kinds of poor choices.
I'm going to roast you.
What?
Tartarus. Tartarus, god, place, thing, other stuff. Well done. Tartarus is a place. It is a spot in the underworld that gets developed, which is down there, and for a long time it is just a hole, but eventually gets turned into a place of torture. But you said there wasn't a hell down there. There wasn't. It was a place of torture, which was completely different. Tartarus existed for a long time in Greek mythology before it was used as a place of torture. It was just a hole that was inside of the underworld, and you didn't go there for being a bad person. If you spent your whole life just stabbing babies, you're like, baby stab, ooh, puppy, stab that too. And you did that your whole life, as far as the Greeks were concerned, you just went down to the underworld. If you met Zeus on a random day and you scuffed his brand new LeBrons, you went to Tartarus. And so it all came down to you making Zeus mad, you go to Tartarus. You kill other humans. He was like, you killed a bunch of humans? Were any of them gods? Oh, I don't care. And so you spend the rest of your life down there. So that is where Tartarus comes in, and there was a very, very small group of people who get tortured there because they just happened to make Zeus mad. But isn't that down in Hades' area? It was, but they had a little agreement between each other, but we'll get to that too. Olympus. Gods, places, things, other stuff. Very brave of you. Olympus, it's a place. And there's actually a name for people who live on Olympus. That would be Olympians. And there actually is an Olympus in Greece. There's a Mount Olympus, which is the biggest mountain in the middle of Greece. And they thought that the Mount Olympus Palace was at the top of Mount Olympus. The 12 Olympians were thought to live on top of Mount Olympus. The Olympics that start together tomorrow were named because of this. It originally started because they were trying to impress the gods. The first time they held the Olympics was at the base of Mount Olympus, and they performed down there hoping the gods were watching them. Like, look at me, I'm great, I'm running around and throwing sticks. And then you're hoping that the gods be so impressed they do wonderful things to you. Epimetheus. Gods, places, things, other stuff. Epimetheus was a god. He had a brother, Prometheus, which is a movie, and that movie is connected to Greek mythology once you understand the story. And both of them, they go hand in hand. But Epimetheus was the brother. Prometheus was the god of geniuses. Epimetheus, his twin brother, was the exact opposite. He was the god of idiots and stupidity. They had a god of idiots. Yeah, who's the 7th grader? It's weird. And so they had Epimetheus, the god of idiots. He also was the god that made humans. Prometheus? No. Epimetheus. Does that explain the kids in social studies? Probably. Did you just know shade? I did. Satyr. God. Place. Thing. Other stuff. Wherever you put your minotaurs and your centaurs and your harpies, satyrs go in the same thing. A satyr, not half man, half bull, not half man, half horse, half man, half goat. Half man, half goat. Over here, they were known as these little Pan, the one up there, is the best known, of all of the satyrs. But for your top half was a man, bottom half was a goat. The Hercules cartoon, Phil, the one who does the training, he was a satyr. The Chronicles of Narnia, whatever the guy's name was, or something. Oh, one left, and we'll save that for next week.
Let's stop. Why would you say one
Tomorrow, you have a checkpoint. Friday, secret word. What day is your speech due?
Monday.